Welcome to my channel. I'm a Central Texas gardener in Zone 8B, and in today's video, I'm excited to share my early May spring garden tour with you. Be sure to stay all the way through the end of the video where I will share a very helpful garden tool for weeding. I hope you guys enjoy it. All right, I want to start off with this beauty. This is standing cypress, and this is a Texas native wildflower. It is a biennial, blooming only on its second year, and so this is a little piece of slow gratification for me here. It's been kind of brewing here for a couple of years now, and I am so happy with it. You can see those trumpet-shaped flowers. Let me see if I can get the camera to focus. Look how vibrant that is. This is a hummingbird magnet. Now, I know it looks like I've got a lot of plants here, but really, let me kind of take y'all into the heart of this. Can you guys appreciate there's like one and then two? All of these stalks are coming off of two rosettes here. And so I have heard some people mention that they have tried to sow standing cypress and really didn't have a good turnout. Well, if you've got one or two rosettes, that's what this is. All of those flower stalks have come off of those two rosettes. And so take heart. Keep in mind that rosette will probably form or kind of hang out pretty low growing for about a year. It'll make it through winter freezes. And that second year, it'll shoot up with all these flower stalks and bloom for you. Coming along here, I had a bit of a zinnia situation, and I just kind of thinned these out because this was just so dense with zinnias, and you know that's just really going to invite disease and lots of nutrient competition. So I tried to thin them out. I kind of eyeballed 8 to 12 inches apart, and so that's what's going on there. Coming along here at the front, this is my Santolina, and this is a low-growing mounding plant. It is evergreen and it does flower. The flowers haven't quite opened yet. This gets about 1.5 feet in height and about 2 to 3 feet in spread. I've got a couple of these and added a third this spring. This is the one I added. It looks kind of scraggly, but you know, it'll get itself established, and before you know, it'll look kind of like that one. Here is Jerusalem sage, and this is an evergreen plant that is that can get about 4 to 5 feet in height and spread. And so y'all know, if you watch this channel, I kind of struggle with spacing, and so I don't know if I've given enough room, because guess what, I put another one right over there. And so, but you can check out these flowers. Aren't those stunning? And like I said, it's an evergreen, so you're going to get all year interest with this plant. And these leaves are kind of like lamb's ear, sort of fuzzy. And then coming along back here, you guys can see my poppy seed heads. And I will tell you, those poppies are a beautiful plant, a beautiful flower, but these seed heads almost look like jewelry. They almost look like they've got gold flecking throughout on this little turquoise bead. And so I almost love the seed pods as much as I love the flowers. And so these are a flower that will need cold stratification. So I put these, I sowed these seeds in the fall, and they germinated through the winter. So I did have some dieback on some of the early growth that came up, but plenty survived, and I had a pretty nice showing this early spring. I don't think I've got any blooming right now. I think they've pretty much gone to seed. I think this one is my last poppy flower here. And so it's kind of not very red and more pink, so it's kind of interesting. So coming along this way, this is mealy blue sage, and y'all know, if you watch this channel, this is one of my top 3 favorite Texas plants. It is drought tolerant, it obviously flowers, it's very vigorous in growth, to the point where I will have to prune this here pretty soon, and then I'll have to probably prune it again in July. There's actually 2 plants here, so these get about 4 feet in height and spread. Very loved by pollinators. There's a lot of pollinator activity out here during the day. But like I said, I will have to prune this back. This is kind of getting a little leggy here. and I'm hoping to create a more dense growth habit for the summer. Coming along next to it, I've got a couple of Russian sage. And Russian sage, also very drought tolerant plant. You can kind of see, and then it has these blue, kind of these purplish, dusky lavender flowers. And I believe this gets about 3 feet in height and spread. I'm not entirely sure. These seem to not get as big as the mealy blue sage, but very drought tolerant. And I have most of this stuff back here in a partial shade setting. Now, coming along here in my zinnia situation, in the midst of it all, I have got this, and this is coral nymph salvia, and I'm super excited because these were such pretty plants, and it got really cold, and I think I had one or two, and it died, or they died, and but they reseeded themselves pretty readily, and so I've got all these volunteers here, and it's a beautiful annual, I guess, for us here because it's cooler, but can be a perennial in warmer zones, and I think also gets about 3 feet in height. I have a Japanese maple, and this is called an Emperor One, and I believe it is a type of bloodgood. And these types of Japanese maples tend to do better in our heat because they retain that dark burgundy or red color much better than some of the other varieties. Now, Japanese maples are really meant to be a shade or understory tree. They don't like direct sun. And for the most part, this is kind of in a northeast setting, but I do get some afternoon sun here, sometimes in the summer, late summer, and so the top of this gets a little bit crispy, but it comes back every year just fine. Coming along the front here, if you're like, what is all that beautiful yellow? Well, that is sunshine ligustrum. And these primarily get morning sun. They're super happy here. They can get as tall as 4 to 6 feet, and I think I've got a few that one over there is kind of tall. But because these have done so well, I have gone ahead and added a few more over there. For the most part, these do retain their foliage throughout the winter, although they can get some browning once it gets really cold. And so I've been super happy with these. You got to be careful with ligustrum because many ligustrums are invasive, and so if the birds carry those seeds of ligustrum out to other areas, they can kind of crowd out native plants, which is not great for the local ecology. But this one is sterile. Sunshine ligustrum is sterile, so you don't have to worry about this being an invasive plant. Coming along the front here, I have got some Artemisia, and those have really kind of taken off here. And this is I think it kind of uses a ground cover, but I have also heard some of these can get pretty tall, like 6 feet. So I cannot remember which type of Artemisia I got. My hope is that I've kind of got more of a mounding ground cover, but I just thought that foliage was so pretty, and so we'll see how these do. I'll let you know if they're 6 feet by the end of the summer. Coming along the front here, this is not mealy blue sage. These are indigo spires, salvia, and so they look a lot like mealy blue sage, but they're not. And so my thought was that I'd have these nice yellow backdrop, and in the growing season when the salvia are doing their thing, that purple against that yellow would be really pretty. So we'll see how that turns out. That little pop of red back here, this is cedar sage. And I know in Texas, cedar is like a dirty word, but this is not a cedar plant or anything. This is just, tends to grow underneath cedar trees because they do require a partial shade environment, and they do not like a lot of leaf litter. So cedars, for the most part, don't drop a lot of needles or anything. I have these underneath my junipers here, which are sort of like cedars in that respect. They don't have a lot of like needle drop or anything like that. And so I have got several there. And then let's talk about these junipers, because I'm always surprised. I get a lot of questions about these. These are Spartan junipers, and these get about 20 feet in height, and I do have a series of 3 here. You can tell that they're just full of berries, and so the birds often like to eat these berries and things, and so I like it for that reason. But these have really done well. I think junipers in general really need an arid environment. They do very well in like West Texas, but here in Central Texas we can get a lot of rain and in fall and spring, and so sometimes these can struggle with fungal disease if you're not careful. With that being said, I did go ahead and add 4 more, so hopefully kind of create a little bit of a screening here, so that I'll have 7 total. So we'll see how those do, but that's what those are, Spartan junipers. And you can see how tall that standing cypress is. I think that gets about 6 feet tall. This way, I've got more mealy blue sage in the background, and I have a few varieties of autumn sage here. And then here I have something called I think it's a Gara or Gora. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. But this is a beautiful Texas native that has these long flower stems, and they just sort of look like, you know, dancing butterflies when the wind blows. I will say that I have found that this plant needs a little bit more water than some of my other natives, and in the summer it almost looks like a giant tumbleweed. But it comes back once we get those fall rains. And so, but yeah, very pretty plant. Here, I want to talk about a couple of sets of plants. Here I have Mexican mint marigold, and I have a series of 3 plants. And these are actually used, I guess, for, like you can use it as like an herb. I guess the flavor of this is like tarragon for cooking, and I've not tried it or anything, but the reason I like these is that these are a great fall nectar source for your pollinators, and so just something to consider. And then here I have another great sort of fall bloomer. This will probably actually bloom throughout the summer as well, but this is skeleton leaf goldeneye, and they have similar flowers to the Mexican mint marigold, kind of a little yellow daisy-like bloom. And I had one in the front that I transferred back here, and I don't know if it's going to survive the transplant. I mean, I see some green, but you can see it looks pretty bedraggled. So stay tuned. We'll see if it makes it. This is antelope horn milkweed, and milkweed is a required or necessary host plant for the monarch butterfly. And I wish I could say I intentionally put this plant here, but I did not. It just is a volunteer. And my first year or 2 with this bed, this landscaped bed, I was just yanking this out thinking it was some sort of weed. And I just didn't know, y'all. So now I know, and I've let it just come back every year. And this year it's got, you know, like 4 or 5 flower stems. Last year it only had 1. So I hope that I get to see some monarch eggs on here. We'll see. Here is that wine cup, and I think I'm just going to cut it back here in the next week or 2. I think it's kind of done its thing, and it's a little overgrown, and then some of it's diseased in there, and so, this was such a pretty early spring bloomer for me, and I think it'll sporadically bloom throughout the summer too, but it has kind of taken over. I mean, you can kind of see it's like everywhere. Just above it is a desert willow, and this is an ornamental tree. I think it gets about 15, maybe 20 feet, but you can see those sort of trumpet-shaped flowers and lots of pollinator activity out here, to include hummingbirds. This is deciduous, so but it'll bloom all through, even through early December. I'll still have blooms out here. Here is my rock rose, and it's just starting to flower, and so about early March, I cut this back to maybe about 2 feet in height, and it's easily 5 feet across now. And so it is very happy there. And then next to it, I have an autumn sage, and this is a white autumn sage. And this is another one of my top favorite Texas plants. This is an evergreen flowering shrub, and it readily also reseeds itself, and so very, very pretty. Coming along back here, I have got these little plants, and I kind of torched them with my weed torch recently. I didn't mean to, but this is rattlesnake master, and I've got 3 of them here. And I know you're like, wow, that's really not that impressive, but these are stunning plants. They get about 6 feet in height, and I thought that would be a really cool kind of backdrop behind this area here to sort of poke up over this rock rose and such. And so I also behind it have got some sunflowers, and once you have one sunflower, you're going to have lots more. And so when those the little seeds started to germinate, I just kind of moved them where I wanted them. But, you know, I mean, I don't really have a ton going on with this fence line here. So I said, why not? Let's just let that sunflower hang out there. It'll be beautiful. The pollinators will love it. And so I put like several back here. I'm sorry for my air conditioning units. It's going to get loud. I do have some citrus plants. I've got a Satsuma orange and then an improved Meyer lemon over here. And then I've got just some small cherry tomatoes here. I haven't had a ton of yield, but they're fruiting. And so I probably planted too many in a bed. I've got 3 in a bed, and they look a little bit jungly, but we'll see how it goes. And then here, I've got more sunflowers. And so if you've seen previous videos, you know normally I have just a fully lined hoop house here for the winter. Well, I took the liner off and we put a shade cloth on just to kind of have an area of respite for some plants that need more shade. And so I'm excited about that. And we did, when we did our hoop house, we did secure it to like a 4x4 frame that we built, and we bracketed it down. I don't know if you can kind of see those brackets. And so that's really done the trick. And we've had some very strong spring winds, and it hasn't taken flight or anything. I have a rain tank that catches water from my roof. I do have that rain tank on pressure. I have it connected to a pump, and then that pump is actually connected to a timer, which is connected to my drip irrigation. So I am currently watering my vegetable garden with rainwater. Now, whether or not you want to use stored rainwater to water your edible garden, I think that's a decision every gardener needs to make for themselves. Of course, you know, rainwater itself is pure. There's very little issue with it, if any. But the second it hits your roof, a gutter, and sits in a tank, there's contaminant, right? And so you have to kind of consider what you want to use it for. So there's no harm in using that on your ornamentals, but whether or not you want to use it on your edibles, that's kind of a decision you'll have to sort of think about. I do want to do a little bit more of an in-depth video on that, so stay tuned for that. I do have a little gem magnolia here that's started to bloom, and this is an evergreen and this is magnolias are slow growing, but this is a shorter variety, maybe up to 30 feet. Underneath it is Texas lantana, and it's blooming. This is just one plant. It gets quite a spread, like 5 to 6 feet sometimes, and so But very, very pretty plant. And I've got another Texas lantana I just stuck in that pot because it was in the shade and I knew it wouldn't do well. Anyway, I have another one of my top 3 Texas plants. This is Vexmenia. This gets about 2 to 2.5 feet in height and quite a spread, usually about 3 feet. This one currently looks as flat as a pancake because we've just had a lot of rain, but you can see those beautiful flowers here. Let me see if I can get it to kind of focus for you. Aren't those pretty? And one of my favorite things about this, I don't know if you can appreciate how rigid the stems are. They're pretty rigid. Is sometimes small finches just like to sit out here on these stems once these flowers go to seed, and they just eat the seeds right off the stems. And so that's really fun to watch. This readily spreads, and so I've got all these little volunteers underneath here. So I'm going to have to find all of those a little home. I have a volunteer. I actually put that one there. And this is just growing in straight decomposed granite. So that lets you know that this is a very hardy plant, needs very little maintenance. If anything, like many of our natives, these really do require excellent drainage, but not a lot of water. And so really, and they're just so pretty. Coming along here, I have got Wright's skullcap, and you can see how pretty those blooms are. And these are typically a mounding and low growing shrub, and they get about 1 to 2 feet in height and spread, and they are evergreen, though they'll get a little dieback in the winter. And I think I have several of these that have got these bugs on it. Can you guys see that little red and black? Let me see if I can get it to focus. And this is called, it may not focus, shiny flea beetle. And then I think I have got some larvae down here. You guys see that this little orange thing here? And for most of my, you can see another one here. This little orange guy here. For most of my skullcap, it's not been a problem, but I had some newer ones that weren't very established, and it almost decimated them. So I don't know. I haven't really done anything about the shiny flea beetles on these particular skull caps. I have tried to get rid of them on the ones that are newer out in my front landscape. Back here, I have this new crepe myrtle, and I know not everybody's excited about crepe myrtles and stuff, but I got this because it's sort of, crepe myrtles are known for being bulletproof, for better or for worse. I mean, you can really neglect them and they do fine. Because I've had a really hard time getting things established back here. I mean, I have tried Turk's Cap, I've tried American Beautyberry, and I've tried shrimp plants, and they'll either look stunning through the growing season and just not come back in the winter, or they won't make it at all. So I've got this Turk's Cap, or not Turk's Cap, but this crepe myrtle, and this is called, let's see, Ebony Embers crepe myrtle. Sorry, it's probably not going to focus here for you. And so this is a semi-dwarf variety, gets about 12 to 15 feet in height. I've got the room for it this way, and so even if it doesn't bloom, because really this is a mostly shade, partial shade setting, even if it doesn't bloom because it is so shady, I just think that foliage offers a lot of really pretty contrast and color, and so I am just happy with that. Coming along here, I've got that whale's tongue agave, and so far so good. We haven't had any major hailstorms, but last year this was just torn up by the hail, but it made a nice recovery. And over here, this is Mexican oregano, and this is a very interesting plant because I believe this is an evergreen. I planted this, I think, like a couple years ago, and it really didn't do well, but I guess enough survived, and it's sort of making a bit of a comeback. This does flower, and you can use it for cooking. It smells wonderful, and so we'll see how it does. Along here, I've just planted all this coleus because I had like a coleus plant here last year, and it needed like zero maintenance. Like I barely watered it, and it was phenomenal. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna just put a bunch of them back here and we'll see if we can kind of fill that space. So I'm gonna take you guys out front here so you can kind of see what's going on with this bed. So here are those Blackfoot daisies, and they've gotten quite a bit bigger. I think they like this spot pretty well. And then these yucca are blooming. These, I think, are blue powder yucca. This one's kind of already done its thing. And they're putting on little pups at the bottom. And so here you can see those less established, smaller skull cap, kind of where I've got a little empty spot. And you can kind of see how I've got quite a bit of damage here on some of these, but we'll see if they rebound. Here I have, this is red yucca, and it's also blooming. So there's that. And then here is the other bed. This is the mulched bed, and you can see that Mexican feathergrass, and it's really taken off. And I've got these dwarf Yopon hollies throughout here. And then I have got this. This is, if you see this in your mulch bed, this is slime mold, and it's not harmful to your plants. Pretty common in mulched areas, and so just if you see it, you don't have to worry about it. Sometimes if it grows on top of a plant or something, I'll just spray it off. And then coming along this way, you can see those bluebonnets, and they have gone to seed. So I'm just letting them drop all of those seeds here. So I heard you can hear these when these open up, and they just almost like sound like a pop when they drop their seeds. So they're not very pretty right now, but I'm letting them go ahead and do their thing. So hopefully next year I can have a nice stand of bluebonnets. So I want to talk about a tool that's been very helpful for me in weeding my decomposed granite and my rock garden beds, and that is a weed torch. And torch is the operative word here because it literally shoots fire out at the other end of it. Now, how that works is all of that heat ruptures the cell in the plant foliage, thereby inhibiting photosynthesis. And if that plant is immature enough, usually it kills it totally, but sometimes you'll need repeat treatments. Now, this is part of a weeding maintenance program, and it's not a one and done. And so sometimes you'll have to get after things, an area a couple of times once a week for a little bit to really suppress those weeds. Now, I use this in non-flammable surface areas, so decomposed granite and rock. I would not use this on like in a wood mulched bed because wood is very flammable. Likewise, I wouldn't use it in an area where there might be things that could be damaged by all the heat. So think about like a rubber mulched bed, or if you have plastic edging. You also have to be careful because even though the heat comes directly right out of here, the vicinity around this torch is also very hot, and you can damage existing plants that you're trying not to damage. So you just have to be careful with that. I primarily use this in the wetter months, spring and fall, just to lower the risk of creating any fires. And then I also tend to use this right after a rain. And if it hasn't rained for a while and I need a torch an area, then what I'll typically do is just take a garden hose and wet the area down really well. And that also actually helps the heat kill the plant quicker as well. So when you get one of these, this is typically what you get. You get the wand, you get the tubing that's attached to the wand, but the propane tank you'll have to purchase separately, usually at a big box store, at a gas station. It's the same propane tank that you would attach to your gas grill. And this particular model has an igniter switch, which I find very helpful because otherwise you have to turn the gas on and then you've got to create some sort of spark at the other end of this to create the flame, which did not sound like fun to me. So I like the igniter switch on this. So this is not a one-size-fits-all scenario, but it is a great tool to have in your garden arsenal. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and until the next one, y'all take care.